No background music on this video, just the pure sound of two piston engines taking my British Norman Islander on the world's shortest scheduled commercial flight from Westray Island to Papa Westray Island up in the Orkney Islands of Scotland. Join me on this flight so I can knock off one of my major bucket list items in the world of aviation. Now our story actually begins here at Kirkwall Airport, which is where all these flights launch from. They start at Kirkwall, they fly to Westray, and then Papa Westray, or in the reverse order, and then return to Kirkwall. So the day before, I actually started in Kirkwall, flew up to Westray, where I then stayed overnight. Now the island of Westray has been around for thousands of years, literally, so it's got some history to it, but it's not that big of an island. There's less than 600 people that live here, and so there's really not all that much going on. But it is a beautiful place, and it's totally peaceful and a relaxing place to spend a night. If you decide to come up here and do this shortest flight, I highly suggest you spend a night here on this wonderful island. To give you a sense of just how small this place is, the taxi driver that drove me from the airport to my hotel was also one of the main people working at the fire station that has to be present when the aircraft arrives, and if I recall correctly, him or his family runs one of the main shops in town. So you figure with under 600 people, a lot of people here are going to take on many roles. And by the way, what you're seeing across the water there is Papa Westray, the island in which we will be flying tomorrow morning on the world's shortest flight. Last thing I'll mention before we head to the airport is that the Pierre Wall Hotel was fantastic. Not even a paid sponsorship or anything, it was a great space to spend a night. The rooms are nice and clean with a shared restroom, and considering the limited amount of amenities available to those visiting the island, it was great because right downstairs it had its own restaurant that served food and a bar just outside of that. And with that, I welcome you to the Westray Airport. What you're looking at here is the airport terminal building. It's also the airport operations center. Next to that's where you're going to find the firehouse, where they house the fire engine that's regulatory to be on field. And that's it. That's the entire airport. One little building and one little firehouse. Obviously, the airport's rather small, with one fire personnel and one operations personnel minimum working the terminal at all times. Immediately adjacent to the terminal, you have the walk-through and drive-through gates that are manned by the operations personnel, and that's pretty much it. You can see on the tarmac the ramp area right in front where the aircraft can park and turn around. Other than that is the one main runway. Venturing inside the terminal building that they allowed us entrance to, there is a little restroom, and also this room, which is both a passenger waiting room and also an operations stand. Out one window you have a great view of the airport and the main runway, and out the other window you have a view across the channel over to the Papa Westray Island. As a matter of fact, if I zoom in my camera, you can see these two little barn-looking things. Those are the terminal and the firehouse over at Papa Westray, in addition to the windsock, which you can also see off to the left. You'll also see a lot of paperwork and radios, as it kind of serves as an ATC of sorts. There's not an official ATC up in these islands, but rather when the aircraft departs Kirkwall, they make one final call to ATC down there before calling over here to operations, and they'll make down whatever notes they need about the flight. A couple fun things in the building. First off was the diagram of the airport where it allegedly has a grass strip, and also the main runway, which is only about 1,700 feet long. There was also a bulletin board with a number of fun things. First off was the safety instructions to familiarize ourselves with on the Islander aircraft. The bulletin board had information including phone numbers, stuff about LoganAir, the airport, and the aircraft we were about to get on, in addition to a Guinness World Record certificate, just like the one that I was able to get once I got back to Kirkwall. It wasn't long before our airplane came into view, as it had just finished its about 10 to 15 minute flight up from Kirkwall to pick us up, take us over to Papa Westray, and then continue back down to Kirkwall. We got to watch the plane taxi in right in front of us, drop off a couple of passengers before it was ready for boarding. This flight has been around for quite some time and still serves a very functional purpose for the people that live on these islands, as they use it to get to anything from doctor's appointments to school, town hall meetings, or even just a mail route. Perhaps the most interesting thing this has ever played host to, however, is Tom Kitchen, a famous Scottish chef, tried to serve a 3-course meal on the world's shortest flight. He got a group of people together who live on the island and take this flight regularly for personal or business reasons, and decided to make them a meal and see if they could finish it in the entirety of the time it took them to get from Westray to Papa Westray. It's a fascinating concept, and everyone was able to finish the starter, the entree, and the dessert prior to landing at Papa Westray. There isn't really boarding passes or assigned seating for this flight. Instead, we were escorted out onto the ramp, up next to the aircraft where we stepped into our airplane. There's 2 boarding doors, one on the right side and one on the left side. The one on the right goes to the front 2 rows, the one on the left side goes to the back 2 rows. But here you can see my seat. I was in the front left seat, technically I guess 2A according to the airline's website. It was from here we also got a great view of one of the rare airline-operated piston aircraft engine startups. We were moving at a great pace. As soon as those engines were started, we had already began our taxi out to the main runway to take off towards Papa Westray. Considering we only had about 500 meters of runway total and we were already about halfway down that, the taxi to the end of the runway took us maybe 30 seconds at most. We spun around and made our departure. And after 1 minute and 24 seconds, or a total of 84 seconds altogether, we had reached Papa Westray Island, just across the channel from Westray Island, making it so that we had finally completed the world's shortest commercially scheduled flight. Now, the airport in Papa Westray is just as small as the one in Westray, having an almost identical terminal and an almost identical firehouse. The main difference between the islands, from my point of view at least, is that this island has less than 100 people. It took all of about maybe 5 minutes for them to deplane those passengers who were ending their journey here, and then replane the people who were continuing their journey or boarding here to continue to Kirkwall. So I used that as an opportunity to hop out of the airplane, see the airport just a little bit. It also gave me a wonderful chance to just check out what this Islander looked like. Now, the Britten Norman Islander is actually made here in the United Kingdom and has been a fairly popular aircraft. Particularly what it's best at is its short field takeoff and landing performance. Hence the reason we see it here on these runways, which are less than 2,000 feet long and just packed gravel. You'll also find it throughout the Caribbean at airports like St. Bart's and Saba, which have significantly shorter runways and need the short field takeoff and landing performance. It wasn't long before we had everyone on board and we were ready to continue to Kirkwall, our final destination. And considering that this channel mostly just focuses on business class products, I thought it would be kind of fun to do a same style of review on this short 10-minute flight back to Kirkwall. First things first, it wouldn't be a true flight review without taking an in-depth look at the in-flight entertainment available on board this Britten Norman Islander aircraft. Seatback entertainment doesn't exist. Wi-Fi? Don't need it. You might ask why. We never really got high enough that I lost cell service. Throughout this entire flight, I actually was able to continue browsing the internet. We never really got higher than about 400, 500 feet the entire time, and so if I needed to make a phone call, text, or look something up, just used my phone. Now, the flight really did only take about 10 to 12 minutes to get back to Kirkwall, maybe even faster if this plane could have gone faster than 100 knots. But the fact that we were low and slow was excellent for taking in the full views of these Orkney Islands. First things first, it goes without saying that the Islander is a loud aircraft. It can get painful to your ears after a little while. Luckily, none of the flights that I was on for this journey were all that long. They do offer earplugs at most of their destinations upon request, but otherwise, people were commonly seen just kind of plugging their ears throughout the flight. In your head, you're probably thinking, this plane's kind of small, kind of light, I wonder where they're keeping all of our baggage. Well, if you sit in the back row, that question goes away pretty quickly, as at one point I turned around to stretch and realized that I could see all the bags right underneath this tarp here. In addition, I know I mentioned it, but I am always getting hot on airplanes. In the Britten Norman Islander, that is not a worry because you have individual overhead air vents. Not even the A350 can do that. Come on, bro. As the city of Kirkwall came into view, it meant that this journey was coming to a close, and all jokes aside, it was a ton of fun. Also, one of the cheapest aviation adventures that can be had, considering the entire flight from Kirkwall, finishing the journey back to Kirkwall, you can get for under 50 pounds. Landing is also extra fun in this airplane because considering there's no cockpit door, you could basically see just right past the single pilot on board, out in front of the airplane on landing. Kirkwall is actually one of the operating hubs for LoganAir, so we did get to see quite a few fun LoganAir aircraft on their ramp. Mainly the ATRs, as that's where LoganAir is heading with the 42s and 72s, but they do still hold a fleet of the Saab 340 aircraft. They are planned to be retired very soon, replaced with the ATRs, so it was pretty cool to be able to see those on the ramp. But with that, the journey had been completed. It was an excellent trip, one of my favorite aviation journeys I've been on, as everyone involved was so happy, positive, and glad to be there. All the ground staff, the captain, and even all the other passengers were just having a good time, even the locals that were on board. And to make everything just a little bit better, getting back to Kirk while I went up to the counter, and they were more than happy to get me one of the certificates that I had completed this flight, customized with my name, the date, the exact flight time, and a signature from my wonderful captain. Let me know down below though, have you done this flight? Do you want to do this flight? And what are your thoughts on this flight? I think it's an excellent piece of aviation that's been around for quite a while and will probably remain around, as it's a great service to these islands. But in the meantime, have some safe travels, and I will see you guys next week.